What's going on, everyone? Welcome to I should say, our last Football Friday, if you will, edition of BYP with Q, even though we'll recap the Super Bowl come Monday. But Rich Quinones is here from our good friends over at Played Again Sports, 1450 Clements Bridge Road in Denver, New Jersey. Don't forget about the new Livingston store as well, as we welcome in our good friend Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game, and of course part of Broad Street South. Super Bowl 58, San Francisco, Kansas City. Might as well make this game a pick 'em. It's almost as though your guess is as good as mine. I've kind of wavered a little bit. I don't like doing that, but I think we're in store for an entertaining game. But I've been going back and forth, and let me ask you this to start. Why is it we have 1,000 national talking heads over the last several weeks, whether it's Fox, ESPN, CBS Sports, whatever, man, Satellite, XM, Mad Dog, and all the conversation has been Brock Purdy, a game manager. You would think with all that talent, all that meat in those lineups, they would actually talk friggin' X's and O's. Or is that one of the reasons that we get a 17-hour pregame show on Sunday to talk X's and O's? I just don't get it. Like, enough of the Brock Purdy, a game manager conversation. Stop.
Yeah, it's something to talk about. You hate to say they got to fill programming, but they do, and they've latched onto this, and it's the whole narrative. The last player taken in the draft,
Yep.
he's a guy that can't get it done. Well, we know game managers. Guys. I hate to call him out this way, but like an Alex Smith type, quality guy, some good wins, but never made it to Super Bowl. And the fact that Brock Purdy has now willed his team to the Super Bowl, and he's a winner. He's a guy that gets the
Yep.
job done. He's 26-4 now as a starter Q, and put all that bias behind him in terms of being the last player taken. Sometimes these scouts miss, and it is what it is. And at this point in his career, he's in his second season. He's led his team to the Super Bowl. 2-0 in the playoffs this season and getting the job done. So, yeah, as I'm with you, close that narrative down. Let's see if he can battle the best quarterback that's out there. Obviously, it's a huge Samson, Goliath, Goliath out there, and look, it's like Tom Brady almost in Nick Foles. You remember that? No one was giving Foles the respect going in that Super Bowl. Well, no one's giving Purdy the respect going in here, going against Patrick Mahomes, and we'll see how this plays out. But as you said, take it for what it's worth. The team is here. They've rallied around him, and obviously he's the true leader of that offense.
Yeah, and it's a good point you bring up. I mean, all the kid does is win. And listen, I mean, Kansas City, we know how their defense is playing. You can argue this is probably Mahomes' best defense he's had in a while. We know about San Francisco's defense. We know both teams come in a little banged up. Not everyone's healthy at this time of year, but you still have the playmakers that you need out there, even though some of them, i.e. a Samuel, maybe a Pacheco, maybe a Purdy, hell, maybe even a Holmes, you're a hit away from altering the game. And it's so cliche. We've had 20-something odd weeks to start, from OTAs to training camp to preseason, regular season, but the game's going to be won and lost in the trenches. If San Fran harasses Mahomes like Tampa did a couple of years ago, then it's game over. And I can see San Fran, rolling in this one. If they do what Seattle did years ago to Denver, right, where that safety kind of set the tone for the game, I don't think it's going to play out like that. But I just believe that as much as we push, as long as Kansas City has Mahomes narrative, people are going to side towards Kansas City's, towards the Chiefs. But listen, this offense is not as explosive as we've seen in years past. So I guess if you kind of handicap it right now, if you look at that Kansas City offense against that 49ers defense, who do you give the edge to?
Yeah, Q. And then, we're going to look at this 360 view in terms of this matchup, and we'll start with the offense, as you're saying. The Chiefs' offense averaged 22 points a game, but we've seen them struggle this season. They led the NFL in drops, and we talk about the struggles of MVS, and we'll see if Kadarius Toney's going to play in this game. He had a lot of drops, and Cole Hardman had a bad fumble earlier in the playoffs, and you don't know if you can trust him. And then the key thing, obviously, is the offensive line of the Kansas City Chiefs. Donovan Smith and Jawan Taylor at the other tackle position, they're very vulnerable. Taylor led the NFL in terms of 17 penalties accepted
Yeah.
against him. He's a guy's false starts. And you already seen Bosa already talk about these guys are holding, and he's trying to already get the refs on his side. So they're vulnerable there. And up the middle, you wonder with Thuney being injured, I don't think he's going to play QE. He's got a pectoral injury. If the Niners and that vaunted defensive line, a lot of them have not lived up to their billing, guys like Chase Young, but Hargrave has played very well. Armstead's played very well. And then they have Bosa if they can get that pressure on Patrick Mahomes. So Mahomes was sacked 27 times this season. And if they can harass him, uh, there'll be some plays behind that because let's face it, the Niners defense is built around their linebackers.
Yep.
Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner have done a great job back there in terms of just coverage. Greenlaw had the 2 interceptions earlier in the playoffs. So dangerous group back there. And I think, yes, I think the Niners defense can do some things against them. Now, the Niners defense, their corners are a little vulnerable, Q.
Right.
We've seen them. They had a long play down the field in terms of pass interference earlier in the playoffs that set up a key touchdown against them. So, Mahomes will try to attack them. Obviously, the key guy is Travis Kelce. Can they shut him down? So
Yeah.
that's going to be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, and Detroit was able to go right down the field. I mean, that's why one of the BetMGM has, first team to score within the first 5 minutes, a plus 185, scoreless first 5 minutes at minus 250. I don't know if it plays out necessarily like that, but Detroit was able to kind of go right down the field. Kansas City, obviously, we know they've got some weapons, whether it's, the wide receivers, whether it's Pacheco, whether it's Kelce, whether it's Mahomes. You mentioned Tony. This to me also seems like a game where Mahomes is probably going to have to make some plays with his legs, keep some drives alive. You're going to have a roamer. You're going to have a spy from the linebacker position on San Francisco. X factors. We know about the 2 head coaches. Andy Reid's been there before. Shanahan, we know his track record. Is he going to get tight? Is Andy Reid going to be aggressive? Not to the point maybe like a Quincy in the NFC Championship. But I still look at this game where, maybe this is the moment. See, Brock Purdy, I don't see him throwing for over 250 yards in this game. The total is 246. I don't see him hitting that number. I think it's going to be an under type of game where they're going to probably give the ball to CMC 20, 25 plus times. Samuel always seems to get nicked up, but to me, those are the 2 where they have to just really be a part of that offense. Then it opens that seam route, right? It opens that seam route for Kittle and Ayuk, and he might be an X factor in this one. If this is a high scoring game, who does it favor, San Francisco or Kansas City?
Well, that's a good one. I would have to say it favors the Niners because the Niners like to put up points. We know that they're not good on terms of comebacks, Q. So they like to get that big lead and then kind of work from there and get the defensive pressure behind it. So I think high scoring game would definitely favor the Niners. They have all those weapons: Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, as you were talking about, Kittle. So they would like to put points up there, and there have been games where we've seen the Chiefs defense kind of struggle in terms of stopping people. So their defense has allowed 17.2 per game, but there are a couple times where teams did put up some numbers against them. So Spagnuolo, obviously the architect, the guy who's been there before with the Giants, stopping the undefeated Patriots at the time. Now he's got a tough task going against this Niners team. I talked about all their particular weapons. And Purdy, he's grown up a lot this season. 31 touchdowns, only 11 interceptions, only sacked 28 times this year. So he's efficient in the pocket. His completion percentage is right around 70%. And he's going to want to hit those high percentage throws, as you were talking about, to Kittle and Ayuk and the rest of the guys over the middle.
But can the moment perhaps be too big for him? I mean, look, they're down big in that game against Detroit, and it's not like they lit the world on fire against Green Bay. They had to come back where he had the drive, still made the plays against Detroit as well. But I think Kansas City's a different animal where if you fall behind 20-3, 17-3, I believe it changes how you're going to run your offense. And maybe it puts the ball in his hands too much. And he's got to force the issue and try to get back into the game by throwing it. You know, when they lost this year and they had to come from behind, a lot of times they abandoned the ground game. Now, most teams will typically do that. I'm wondering how that first quarter is going to play out if you believe the moment might be too big for him based on what we've seen over the last several weeks. But then I guess you can almost counter that and say, well, look at some of the drives he's had late. But I'm asking you your opinion on it.
Yeah, Q. So if the Niners are trailing going into the fourth quarter by 5 points or more, I talked about this, are 0-31 underneath Shanahan. So you don't want Purdy to kind of be behind in this game. I think, I'm not going to say it's a pressure on him or this, that, but uh, he's definitely going to press, and that's going to be a big problem if they're behind in this one. Obviously, he has the weapons behind him to help him, but McGuffey and Bolton and that Chiefs defense is very underrated. Everybody talks about Spagnuolo and the scheme and the way they
Yeah.
design it, but Chris Jones and those guys, they can get after people, and the Niners are vulnerable up the middle in terms of their offensive line. Obviously, they have Trent Williams, one of the best tackles in the game, but I to help Purdy, I think, as you said, they want to shorten the game, have a lot of possession, not turn the football over, and lean on Christian McCaffrey, who had a huge year this season, averaging 5.5 yards per carry, a guy who's really carrying the mail for them, 14 touchdowns, getting the passes out of the backfield. So don't forget, this is his big moment out in the sun because he got traded to them and he did not play the last time these two teams met. Coming over from Carolina, had a lot of losing seasons. This is his chance to finally be in the big game. So I'm interested to see how he's going to play. In terms of Steve's getting back to them, if they score 21 points, they're 10-0 this season. So if they can get to 21 on that Niners defense, I think they're going to win.
And not a bad path to victory. McCafferty rushing total over 90 and a half. Pacheco, it's actually gone up 61-65. And, from those that are smarter than me, tell me never weigh in the averages. Well, those last three games, about 78. Some people are looking for more of the under in that regard. You mentioned that defense, Kansas City. Obviously, one of their big things in the offseason, they want to resign defensive tackle Chris Jones, their cornerback, L'Jarius Sneed as well. They should be the priority. They can be the game wreckers. You just don't want to have Purdy. And this goes into the conversation of micromanaging, game managing the game. Listen, you can live with dink and dunk, right? If I'm dropping off to McCaffrey for 7 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, to me, that's just as good as a running play, right? And vice versa, second and short. They have to be able to convert third downs. I think Andy Reid's the more aggressive coach between the two. My issue would be Shanahan late game, tighten up a little bit. Man, I'll tell you, it's just, listen, defense wins championships. We've seen it. Are we going to get a 13-3 Rams Patriots Super Bowl? I don't think so. Are we going to get a Super Bowl a couple years ago? Kansas City beats San Francisco where, Garoppolo just needs to make that play. I don't think so either. There's a couple interesting props, 27-24 likely outcome at plus 6,600, 23-20 San Fran wins by 3 at plus 8,000. I believe this is a field goal game. I think you have arguably the best team representing the NFC in San Francisco. I don't think Kansas City's the best team representing the AFC. I mean, obviously they went through Baltimore. We saw what they did defensively against the Ravens in that second half. I don't know. It's just, I can't have that conversation yet, Reed and Mahomes, Brady and Belichick, because Mahomes has to win a lot more games. Let's kind of pump the brakes on that. He hasn't been costing them games, but I still go back to that Tampa Bay Super Bowl, and they had that kid running for his life, flushed out of the pocket. He wasn't going right through the holes. He was, flushed to his left, flushed to his right, rolling around, taking sacks backwards. I mean, he just never stood a chance in that game. Part of me, and I've been going back and forth on this game, part of me believes if the 49er defense, we believe their legit defense that we've seen in the past, plays a 60-minute game, it's going to be an uphill battle for Kansas City to win this game. Look, if they shut down Pacheco and they take away Kelsey, then really offensively, what does Kansas City have left?
You got to have guys like just you're talking about Justin Watson probably stepping up. Obviously, Rasheed Rice, a young guy who's had a great
Yep.
season. Is the stage going to be too big? Because we've seen a lot of rookies shrink out there in the Super Bowl. So I do agree with you that there's a lot of factors in this one, and the Niners, how hungry are they? Because this is their opportunity to prove that they're one of the big boys. Shanahan to finally get his ring. Obviously, as you said, everybody is talking about, Mahomes and Reed in that ilk of their dynasty. They're one of the greatest coach quarterback combos out there. Well, we're still in the moment. You know what I mean? And they have to get it done in this game, Q. And I thought you brought up a good point in talking about the kickers because don't forget Niners kicking Moody, he was 21 to 25 this season. He missed that big kick against the Browns to lose that game. And then you
Late.
saw
Yep.
one against the Lions. He missed a kick as well. Butker's 33 to 35 for the Chiefs. So in terms of kicking matchup, I would have to give the edge to the Chiefs there. But
When you look at
this is a
Andy
tough
Reid,
one.
he's been the what would this be, his fifth Super Bowl, right? One, two,
Yeah,
three,
he was 0-1 for with the Eagles, and then yeah, so he's
one and
2 and
three.
1.
So yeah, this is his fifth Super Bowl, right? So he's looking for his third Lombardi trophy. But more importantly, they're trying to win back to back. I mean, think about that. Draft,
Not
offseason,
yeah,
OTAs, training camp, preseason, regular season, playoffs. You pull out all the stops. Like you're not taking timeouts into the offseason. If you have a fourth down play, if you have a fake punt, a fake field goal, you're throwing everything out there. He's been there before. This is a guy that's going to win well over 300 games when it's all said and done. He's already at 283. I think he's 25 and 16 in the postseason. He's done a hell of a job with Kansas City. It's crazy to think how long he's been with Kansas City when everyone jettisoned after that 42-7 loss to the Giants when he was playing out the string with the Philadelphia Eagles. It seems like 20 years ago. He's a great, great head coach. But with that, you also have to have great players. And I'm wondering if they win this game, Mahomes and Reed, do we start to, are we talking dynasty now, right? 3 out of 4 it would be, right? 3 out of 4, 3 out of 5, back to back. It's so hard to do to not only get back there, but to defend the crown. So let's just say come Monday, we're talking about a Kansas City win. Does this cement more of the legacy of Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, or is it already cemented?
yeah, Q. And we're talking about there hasn't been back-to-back champion in 20 years. The Patriots 03, 04. They were
Wow.
the last ones to get it done. So as you said, there's always something that stops the champion from coming back, whether it's injuries or defections, or it's a different team, and they've done a great job getting this unit back to the
Mm-hmm.
mountaintop again. And we'll see if we're able to put the flag up there and get the championship. But as you said, yeah, in the modern NFL, we're not seeing these dynasties like we used to. Think of the Niners in the 80s and the Steelers in the 70s and even in the early
Dallas.
Patriots and yeah. So yeah, I'd have to put them up there in that conversation. Obviously, Andy Reid is already probably in the Hall of Fame with his record and Mahomes win this one. It's cemented as well that they're both being cantoned together. And as
Yeah, I
that's
mean, listen, you
crazy to
go back a couple of years ago, they were down 10 in the fourth quarter and they rallied to win that game 31-20, which gave Reed his
yeah,
first Super Bowl. You mentioned that 2004 season with the Eagles, they lost. And then obviously they got hammered by Tampa and they come back last year and they win it in a great game against Eagles. I'm not ready to say all-time dynasty. I just think the way the NFL is when you had what the Steelers were able to do, and let's be honest, I mean, the Steelers and who they drafted early on in the 70s. I mean, they built that dynasty. They ruled that decade, the Steelers, Dallas, and then the 49ers in the 80s. I mean, it's crazy to think the 49ers win in 85, lose to the Giants in 86. You have the strike season in 87, win the Super Bowl in 88, win it in 89, lose to the Giants in 90. They also lost in 82 to the 49ers. They could have won 8 titles in that decade. I mean, think about that for a moment. And they ultimately win, what was it, 5, 81, 85, 88, 89, 90. I'm sorry, 95, 5 total. But we know about this franchise. And I think to your point, I'm looking at the NFC, and I think if the Niners had their best shot to win it, it's now. It's now because Purdy might turn back into a pumpkin at 11:30 Sunday night or next. We don't know, right? We know about the AFC, but the NFC, the lines are starting to come on a little bit. People think that um, the Bears will be a better team. Carolina's a bad team, but they're very eventually going to get good. Washington with their changes. You still got the Eagles. You just got Dallas. You've got Green Bay now ascending up. You have all these teams that you're going to try to get through. And I think if you're the 49ers, man, to me, the pressure is on San Francisco, especially after what happened last year in the NFC Championship game and having Purdy get knocked out early. And then everyone saying in the offseason, well, that you weren't going to beat the Eagles, when we realized, yeah, if he was healthy, they probably would have waxed him. So to me, I think this game speaks more about Shanahan than it does about Andy Reid.
Doesn't he's got to take advantage of situations, make adjustments to get it done? Because you talk about those big Super Bowl moments. You think about it, the goal line, Seattle, just run the football with Marshawn Lynch, you win the game. You know what I mean? And sometimes it's simple as that, but they got to take advantage in terms of adjustments. And if they have a chance to keep the Chiefs down, step on their throat and get rid of them. Because we've seen, as you said, too often Mahomes, Andy Reid, they find a way to come back in these games. They make the adjustments, especially after that long halftime. Don't forget about that.
Yeah,
Last season, the Eagles found that out. At halftime, the Chiefs were in there working, and they came out there and they turned the tide on the game in their very first drive of the second half. So, it's tough in terms of beating this combo. And, we're talking about Mahomes is only 27, 28 years old. So it's so early in his career. And this Chiefs team, think about it, they've been to six straight championship games, conference championship games, and
that's crazy.
I just don't know if it's when it's going to stop. That's how good they are at this point. So it's a tough proposition, but Shanahan and his group, they have the highest priced roster in NFL Q. And we're talking about all the all pros they have all over the place. Well, now it's time to put up a show.
Yeah. That's an interesting point you bring up with Mahomes, because it's not like in the NBA when, the Pistons 84, 85, 86, 87, 88, 89, 90, that was an aging team. Mahomes is still relatively young, but man, it's just so hard to keep getting back and winning and knowing that one series, Campbell's still probably kicking himself, and again, I go back and we can argue this until the cows come home. Uh, a play like that, you're not drawing up for that kid Reynolds. It's got to be the running back. It's got to be St. Brown. Same thing's going to apply on Sunday. I'm sorry, but Rice or whomever, if Tony's out there, if it's a fourth down play, you're not drawing up plays like that. You're drawing up for your game breakers, your Samuels, your Christian McCaffreys, your Kelseys, your Kittles. I don't see either quarterback lighting it up. I don't see these quarterbacks throwing for 330, 340. I think this is a 240-ish, 250 type of game. I think both teams are going to rely on the ground game as well. And I say it all the time. To me, it's going to be a chess match. You brought up a really good point about the halftime adjustments. We saw it last year in that Super Bowl. Kansas City won against the Philadelphia Eagles. But man, I thought Baltimore was due. And you reminded me, it's still Kansas City. And as much as I want to say the 49ers are doing, I've been going back and forth, and I'm not yet 100% sold on either team. My gut tells me Kansas City, but my heart is like, maybe this is retribution, right, for past playoff failures for the 49ers. And by the way, not even with this era, this regime, they've had some horrible losses. My buddy's a diehard 49ers team. He still brings up Kyle Williams 2011 with the Giants and the 49ers. So special teams, it could be a factor. I'm going to defer to you on who you like in this game. I have a feeling I know who you like, but I'll get your on the record prediction.
Yeah, and I just saw was, the Niners are a 2-point favorite and over under 48. So, you know, beware the dog. So I'm going with the Chiefs. All the way back. I can't believe my preseason pick that could possibly come true, which is crazy. I even went against it last week, but I just can't go against Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid in this situation. Obviously, the receivers have to hold on to the football. If those guys are dropping passes and Mahomes getting frustrated and he's getting pressure, that could turn this game. But I just think the Chiefs will find a way to win a very close game, possibly on a field goal. I think those kickers will come into play as we talked about special teams as well. And
Yeah, the one thing I hate
Spagnuolo,
about a game like this is people are waiting for Purdy to go 18 of 35 for 210 and a couple picks and say, "See, I told you so."
yeah,
But yet
they're
we're
waiting
not
for him
going
to
to.
become Jake Delhomme. They think, oh, he's a guy that came out of nowhere, and the stage is going to be too bright for him. But we've seen some of these lesser quarterbacks step up in their moment.
Yeah,
So let him go out there, see what he can do. But yeah, the talking has to be ready to pounce if he has a 2 interception game and a pick six or something like that. But I think he'll go out there and give Mahomes everything that he can.
I hope the kid comes up and he plays big. And again, it'll shut up a lot of people. I don't think it feels like there's not a lot of juice to this game. I think it's because of the 2 weeks. I sat and I listened to Goodell with his invite only press conference. And I love the irony, the hypocrisy of sitting up there in Vegas and talking about, sports gambling and saying, "Hey, we have spots on responsible gaming." I mean, come on, man. You're sitting on Vegas on the stage and you're getting ready to have the Super Bowl there. We know how much money is going to be filtered through. We know the bets that are already coming in. I mean, we know about the billions of dollars that's going to be bet on this game. I already pulled it up. So right now, the biggest reported sports Super Bowl wagers so far, a million on the 49ers money line minus 120 at Caesars Sports. 500 grand on 49ers money line minus 125 at Caesars, 500 grand on 49ers money line minus 125 at DraftKings. So again, for the ones that have the money, it looks like right now early, they're looking at the 49ers. But again, I always find these conversations, he's got to say what he's going to say. And there's a reason he invites certain members of the media because no one's going to push, no one's going to press. But I just kind of chuckle and I'm like, come on, man, look behind you. You got a slot machine right behind you.
You pay him $64 million approximately a season to be that mouthpiece. You know what I mean? So you can't trust him. And it's funny, every time the
That's
draft rolls on,
absurd.
these players are hugging him and all this stuff. That guy is firmly behind the owners and they pay him to, do their deeds.
Well, I guess 64 million, maybe I might do that as well. So I don't know. But he, of course, is Lloyd Vance, host of Lloyd Vance's Insider Football 1029 The Game. And of course, Broad Street South. We will have a full recap next week. We'll get into a lot of the coaching carousel, some off-season stuff. But man, I cannot believe it. After
Crazy.
Sunday, it's husbands and boyfriends must get reacquainted with their significant others.
I guess Q will be losing my number for a little bit, but
Was that?
there's always something I said, I guess you'll be losing my number for a little bit, but there's always something to talk about. The NFL
No,
never sleeps, my
well,
friend.
listen, we got the coaching carousel. I asked you this and I failed to mention it while we have a minute or so left. So apparently the narrative has changed now. It's Belichick that was not interested in that Falcons job. I still think, listen, take a year off and the NFC East might be wide open, man. Sirianni
He's
could be a
not,
lame
yeah,
duck. Dable can be a lame duck. And who the hell knows what's going to go on with
correct.
McCarthy.
He's not done. He's coming back. He wants that record, Q. So always something to talk about, and that's a big storyline that's out there.
And maybe I'll give you a week off. Give Lloyd a follow at Lloyd Vance, NFL writer, researcher, historian, insider football, as we mentioned, 1029 The Game, Broad Street South, and of course, PFWA award winner, former ESPN NFL contributor, and Black College Football Hall of Fame selection committee. All right, brother, enjoy the game on Sunday. I'm sure we'll be tweeting while we're eating and soaking it all in, and look forward to it, man. Thank you.
Q, thanks for having me on.